Great. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with my friend Raquel Filmanowicz. She is just a gem. She's a leader in this community, and she has had various roles throughout the years, both at the city of Milwaukee, at BMO Harris Bank, where she is now, and she's also going to tell us a little bit about her leadership of the Democratic National Committee last year during a very tumultuous time. So we have a lot to talk about. Raquel and I have been friends for a long time, and one of my favorite things about her is she's very authentic, and so she will definitely keep it real today. I've asked her to give us some tangible advice that we can take back and apply to our own lives. So I'm very excited to be here with you, Raquel. So first off, you recently posted a photo on Instagram, and it showed the Zeidler Building, City Hall, and BMO Harris Bank. And you talked about how you were reflecting on 20 years of working in those three buildings in Milwaukee. So tell us a little bit about one thing that you learned from each of those roles.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I want to thank Temple. Thanks for the Temple team for getting all this together. Really appreciate it. And the corporate sponsors for today's event. Thank you so much for your continued support. Yeah, so that picture was just so meaningful to me. I was walking down the street and I saw all three buildings and I'm like, wow. But yeah, over the 20 years, I started at, the Zeidler Building and public health. And I would say that's where I just really learned how to be a leader, all the elements that involve like managing people, managing issues, managing crises. And then City Hall was just the politics, like of life, of work, of family, of dealing with, elected officials, and a lot of people in this room can understand that. And then BMO Harris Bank, I learned just kind of how to bring all those learning activities and everything I've learned just to fruition, like to start experiencing and growing into the leader that I wanted to be. So it was just a learning laboratory into a practice at the bank.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what you do at BMO right now, too. Your new role.
Yeah, so I've been with the bank 9.5 years. 8.5 of those years I worked on the corporate philanthropy side, so overseeing charitable grants and sponsorships to nonprofits across our U.S. footprint. And then I took a leave of absence to run the Democratic National Convention in August of 2020. And then came back to the bank. Gratefully, they took me back because I was like, what do I do now? And they brought me back when they were launching a new initiative called BMO Empower, which is a $5 billion 5-year initiative aimed at promoting an inclusive economic recovery for communities of color. So what I do is I work on access to capital. So over the next 5 years, we aim to lend $800 million to minority businesses. And then I'm also working on our social impact fund, where we make equity investments to minority venture capital and private equity. So really excited.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
That'll make a huge difference for our community.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think about when I look at your career is it really hasn't been linear, right? You've worked in the public sector, you've worked in the private sector, you've worked in government. So what would you tell your younger self about your journey if you were looking back on those years? Like, what would you tell 25-year-old Raquel?
Yeah. Oh my God.
So many things, right?
A laundry list of things, but I think really what I would tell myself 20 years ago is to just not be afraid, stand in your truth and what you believe in and what you want to accomplish in your life, both professionally and personally. And just, be your authentic self, because everybody sees it, but sometimes you hold yourself back and out of nerves, out of doubt, out of insecurity. But I would say the sooner you can start working on those feelings and overcoming it, you'll just flourish into this person that everybody wants to support and help and collaborate. So.
Love that. We could all use more of standing in our truth, especially lately, I feel like. So one of the things about your career is I feel like you've really built your reputation on being someone who can influence other people, and we really saw that with your role with the DNC, but also being someone who can really roll up their sleeves and get to work. So you've done, you know, both the strategic side of things, and I've seen you be the tactical person on the ground, like literally directing the event, or, you know, making sure that everyone has what they need. So tell us about how you've balanced that, and also how you've been able to kind of build up your influence within the Milwaukee community. What are some tangible ways that you did that that we can learn from?
Yeah, I see that as more of like compartmentalizing it into different buckets. So like early on, I just wanted to learn, right? I wanted to meet people. I wanted to expand my network. So on the job, I would volunteer for, you know, extra projects. Like I'll run the United Way campaign. I'll do UPAC. Like I'll go to that meeting. I'll speak on behalf of the mayor. Like things that people didn't want to do, that then eventually you become seen as a collaborator, someone that you can be relied on. So I think definitely early on, it's just working on your reputation, making sure people know what you're about, that you keep your word, and you're very professional, and you represent the organization that you work for very well. So those were like the first things I really tried to work on, because I didn't have a network. Like I was like 26 working at City Hall, and like I didn't know anything. And then it was, you know, working in the community, and you know, getting to know our nonprofit network here in Milwaukee, and joining committees and joining boards. Like that helped me a lot too. But no, like now like I'm not above anything. Like if we have to like roll up our sleeves and open boxes and get things, like I don't have a problem with that. Like we need to be seen as someone that can be the example, but then also provide leadership when things go amok and people are kind of scrambling. So I just try and like balance all of that.
Love that. So this is a follow-up question, not on my note cards.
Okay.
You've been a leader. You're now a leader, but when you were kind of coming up the ranks, what did you look for in leaders? Like, what did you try to model what are some qualities that you tried to model your own leadership style after?
Look at, like, I have had a mix of both, like leaders that were amazing and I wanted them to be my boss forever and ever. And then I've had leaders that like were really bad. And it really, I just would always try and think of like, what am I learning out of this? Well, I'm learning how not to be like that, right? Like taking those bad attributes and tucking them back to just always remember, like, check your ego at the door. You're all about the mission when you're at work and helping advance people to their best selves. And then, you know, taking the great things that I've learned from bosses and leaders and try and mimic that in a way.
Great. So Raquel and I have known each other for a really long time. I think it's almost 10 years now. We were trying to remember. It's funny how like you kind of don't remember how things start. But I do remember one of the first times that we met, we were at a happy hour for work. So I work with Raquel's husband, Steve, over in the Office of Marketing and Communication at Marquette. We were at a happy hour and it was during H1N1 and you were working at the city. And literally like the person who was handing things out and distributing like all of the vaccines and things like that at the time, which was a great precursor to now. But you've also been in other organizations that have been in crisis. So you were in the city during a very tumultuous time, and then you were at the DNC last year, which turned out to be, you know, one of the craziest non-conventions in history. So tell us a little bit about how you approach those crisis situations and how you keep your cool during those kind of crazy moments.
Yeah, like I said, I think my time at City Hall was like a wonderful like learning laboratory in that you dealt with so many issues. You go into the office thinking, oh, I'm gonna do this and this and this, and the whole day would be just wiped out because there's an outbreak at an elementary school and we need to like get our public health nurses together. We need to brief the mayor. We need to put out a press release, all those things. And then it was just like, you know, just bringing people along, like in those times of crisis, like people want direction. Like, I need you to do this. I need you to go do that. I need you. And then they'll do it. And then we come together and we kind of do a recap and it's just like, we got it done. But keeping your cool, just knowing what to do. That's all people want, is communication, direction, and letting our elected officials know, like, that was like my big thing. But then, like, we were talking about, it's just funny, like, nobody's really asked me to speak about my experience at the Democratic National Convention.
Breaking news.
No,
No, tell us about it. We do want to hear about it.
yeah,
What
it
it
was
was
like,
actually
I was announced as the new CEO March of 2020, like early March. It was like the best week of my life, right? Like, we're gonna pick this up where they started, and like, we're just gonna run with it, and we're gonna cross the finish line. It's gonna be the best economic injection to this region ever. And then literally a week later was March 13th of 2020. And so we all know that Friday where everything shut down. And, I was in public health, and I was keeping tabs of what was happening, but never, and we practiced and had exercises of what we would do as a community for a pandemic. And never did it even come into my mind that we were truly going into a pandemic. Because I remember telling my team that I had just met some people, like, I still didn't even know. Like, I'll see you in 2 weeks, we're good. Like, and then we never went back. Like, I never saw my team in person again. And it was 6 months of just daily stress from 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. Literally back-to-back conference calls with the Biden administration, funders, like, everyone. I don't know. I neglected my family for 6 months. It really took a toll on, like, my mental health. I'm not gonna lie. And then, we had always had hopes that there would be some element of the convention that would be in person. And we worked towards that. But then, when, of course, like, Wisconsin numbers started creeping up, and Lisa election knows all about that. Then it was just like the Biden administration was just like, nope, we're not sending him there, even though we set up all these protocols and safeguard measures. And so that was just like truly disappointing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I was disappointed for the community. I was disappointed for our mayor, for our funders that kind of bankrolled this whole thing. And then there was really, like, no Milwaukee presence, or very little. But, that's when I say, like, politics at the local municipal level can be challenging and exciting at times, but politics at the presidential level, like, it's like another level. Like, you think you have influence, but like, there, it's just like, nope, we're going this direction. We appreciate your opinion, but we're gonna do this. So,
oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I mean, I kind of can, because we, talked throughout that time, and I think you could just see, like, what the toll it was taking on you and your family. So tell us about what you learned, looking back, like, what you feel like you'll take from that kind of, you described it as 6 months of, like, stress every minute. So tell us about what you learned from that, and what you'll take forward in your future path.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time this summer listening to Glennon Doyle's, like, pockets, everybody knows about that. So for me, it was just like, yeah, we can do hard things. Like, we can do really hard things. And that's when I look back, I never would have thought, like, I would have had the inner strength to, like, close that out, like, finish it. Like, there's so many times I'm like, I'm done, I'm going back to BMO, like, y'all can figure this out. But no, like, I still had a team, I still had a board of directors I had to speak to, I still had funders. And, and it was just like a personal dedication. Like, I wanted to do this. I understand, like, how the city is run from a politics and, like, operations standpoint, but I really was curious, like, at that federal level, what's it like? So I finished it out, and I took a sabbatical, and I spent time reconnecting with my family and spending time with my dog in my house. But I think that's the biggest lesson, is that you can do it. Like, even when you're in the thick of it. I just have to say my bestie's here, Griselda. She's always told me, like, there's no way out but through, right? So you gotta get through it, however hard it's gonna be, but it's not gonna last forever.
Love that. Griselda's very wise. We all take her advice. You talked a little bit about mental health. I think that's something that everyone is struggling with especially following the last 2 years. So tell us about like what you do for self-care or for self-care and to just make sure that you're checking in with yourself and that you don't get to that point of, needing another sabbatical after such a tough experience.
Yeah, I think I feel very fortunate. I've got a great group of women that are kind of my sounding board and I can really go to really with anything. And then, I try and like get my workouts in to like sweat out the toxins and like, feel better. But really like I like being home. Like I love being with my family and doing a DIY project on the weekend. It kind of gives me my creative outlet.
Yeah, I love that. So you talked a little bit about your friendship with different, women in Milwaukee, and Raquel has a group of friends across, I would say, like all areas of Milwaukee, from all different parts of her life. And I'd like to count myself as one of them. Raquel and I met, like I said, almost a decade ago. And I think, a lot of people would think like, oh, this is a mentoring relationship. And I think that's definitely how it started. But I think sometimes mentoring can be very one-sided and people don't know like how to get into those relationships and have them be something that really matters and helps them grow. And I think for us, the way that we've really grown together is that our friendship has really been bi-directional. So I think, I really appreciate that Raquel can give me advice. She's at a different point in her life, but I also think Raquel can, bounce things off of me, ask, how I'd like to be managed or how I would approach something. And I think that really has strengthened our friendship. But tell us about how you make time for these friendships and make sure that you're taking care of friendships when you have all these other kind of aspects of your life that demand your attention.
Yeah, it's just who I am. Like I'm a people person in that like I draw energy from other people. And I've just learned over the years that you have to be a friend to have friends. So I really try to be present for them and show up for them. And they do the same for me. And then I really care about them. So I even tell my daughter, like she's 26 now and she's, trying to expand her network. And I said, you need to find friends that can be part of that inner circle. Like you can have a million acquaintances, but you just need a few of those that you can really like vent to, and they can give you good feedback. Like they can give you props, they can show up for your things. They can tell you when you're drinking your own Kool-Aid, like girl, you need to stop. And, like that's what I feel so grateful for. And I support them, I nurture those relationships, and I cherish them because they've really gotten me through some really hard times.
I echo that. Raquel will always show up for her friends. And I think that really means something, like literally showing up, being supportive at whatever stage you're at. And the other thing about you is you remember everyone's name. Like, she'll remember everyone's name, and she always will introduce. Like if I don't know someone, she'll always make it a point to introduce me. And she's done that for so many people that I know, where she'll, offer to have an informational interview or offer to connect to someone else. And I think that really just shows, that you care about Milwaukee and you care about so many different people and making this a better place. So just know that it's appreciated.
Thanks,
Okay, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So you are a mom to 3 beautiful kids. Raquel's kids are all thriving. They're wonderful. Her oldest daughter got married this past summer. And you were a mom at a young age, very young age. How old were you when you had?
I was 20.
You were 20. So I'm a new mom myself, and I feel like it's hard. It's hard to have a career and to especially be a new mom with young kids. So tell me, what advice you'd give to me and to the other young moms in this group about how to be successful and also raise good humans like you've been able to do.
Yeah. This question like really touches my heart because it's so reflective. Because when I was just starting out in my career, I didn't have that work-life balance. I was trying to do everything and sometimes not doing good at any of it. And I would get, sad and depressed and just feel like, a failure. But But now, like the advice I love to give is just go with the seasons of your life. You know, there's gonna be times where you do have the ability to work 60 hours a week and put in all the time and do all the extra projects. But then like life will change, you know, you'll get married, you'll have children, and then you need to kind of pivot and be okay with like taking a step back, you know, being a leader, a quiet leader in a different way. And then your time will come where you will come back and you can kind of ramp up and do the other things. I didn't do that. And I have to say, like, now, like, my kids are 26, 20, and 15. And especially with my oldest, like, I really feel like I missed out on a lot. You know, when she left for college, she came here to Marquette and, you know, we lived on the east side. And I just remember, like, just leave that, you know, you'll come back. And, you know, and then she looks at me. And it was right then that I saw, like, you're never coming back, are you? She's like, no, Mom. So now, you know, we didn't take that trip, you know, we didn't go do that thing. And I want every, you know, woman to know, like, don't have those regrets, you know. Because now with my youngest, with my 15-year-old, I'm like, I'm doing all the things. And she's just like, okay, like, you need to stop. This is too much.
I love it. I think I personally hate the term work-life
Yeah.
balance because I feel like it's never balanced and it's just an unattainable goal. So I appreciate that you have always been so real with me of look, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. So
Sure.
I think it's been helpful for me to just hear from you that like, yeah, that's how it is. Like it's tough sometimes. You can't always be at the same level, you know, as you were before kids, but your time will come. And I think we've really seen that with your career, that it's kind of ebbed and flowed and you've been able to be a good mom and be present, but also have these really high-powered career goals and achieve them. So,
Oh, one thing I just wanted to add about the kids.
yes,
I think it's important, and this is something I never really did. I never really told my kids what I did for a living.
oh, okay.
You know, it's like, my mom knew I worked with the mayor, my mom knew that I work at a bank, but like they really didn't know like day in and day out. And I just felt so bad because I'm like, damn, I'm doing this all for you and you don't even know.
You don't even know what
I don't know
to
what
do.
I did.
Okay, that's very good advice. What other kind of tangible advice do you have? I feel like I've been trying to work on boundaries and it's actually been helpful for me. I pick my daughter up at night and that actually helps me like leave work and at least like put some separation. And even if I go back and work later, I feel like, okay, I'm getting out, I'm, you know, having that time with her. So are there other like tangible things that you feel like, okay, remember to do that? I'm gonna remember to tell her what I do for a living. But are there other things that you're like, oh, I wish I would have done that thing?
Yeah, you know, just yeah, that one I'd have to like think a little bit. Right off the cuff, no, I'll come back to that.
Okay, come back to that, yeah. I mean, when you figure it out, please,
Yeah.
let us all know. Well, we've talked a little bit about, you know, your parents are from Mexico. You are a proud advocate for women of color. You've been the board chair of Hispanic Professionals of Greater Milwaukee. Very involved in a lot of different groups that really advocate for underserved populations. And there's this great story that I love from President Obama's administration where the women in his administration realized that they weren't being called on as often. So they all got together and they decided that they would take turns amplifying each other's ideas. So someone would have a good idea and at least one or two other women would repeat that idea and then give the woman who said it credit. So they'd say, you know, like, Kelsey, that's an awesome idea. And not just repeat it, but actually name the person who originally said it. And the story goes that the president saw that and really, you know, saw that there were all these smart women who were offering ideas and women started getting higher positions. They started getting called on more and being asked for their advice. So I love that story because it just shows like a tangible, simple thing that you can do to really help each other out. So are there other, you know, kind of things that you've learned along the way that have helped you really amplify, especially underrepresented voices, whether that be women or people of color, like things that you've done from your position that you know would like to share with us that we could bring back to our workplaces?
Yeah, I think that my response is twofold in that since I relate to kind of Hispanic, Latina, immigrant, like upbringing and how we're raised is very different than like, you know, my white counterparts, in that we're not really encouraged to ask questions or to be outspoken. And so, you know, that's something, if you live with it your whole life, the moment you step into an office, that doesn't automatically change, right? So, so I feel like I try and mentor and support women of color in the way that, like, to try and build their confidence. Really, it's about confidence building. I spent so many years sitting at the board table, like not saying a word, like years, like never speaking up, never raising my hand. I had ideas and I had opinions, but it was just like the idea of like actually verbalizing something like just petrified me. And so, so that's where I really try and support my, you know, women of color. But then like, I also really work on giving credit where credit's due. You know, when good ideas are brought forth and executed on, like it really means something for a woman that they're acknowledged for it. And I do it in a different ways, like telling them personally, letting their manager know, sending an email. We've got this BMO system where you can send a beam, and you know everybody in the enterprise sees it. And so weekly, I try and remember like who impressed me, like who needs like that shout out, because that really goes a long way. And women remember women that support women, right? I think we're entering in this phase of leadership and what that means, and you know, bringing in vulnerability and leading in a different way. Like, you know, there's the good old boys club. There's a good old girls club too. Okay, so and that's what I'm trying to break down, is that kindness, showing empathy and compassion is really the cornerstone of how people want to be led. And I try and incorporate that.
I love that. I think authenticity too. You're always so good at sharing what you're going through, and I think that really helps you connect with your teams. And I love the idea of thanking people every week. So I'm definitely going to add that to my list of things to do. That's awesome. You obviously have worked a lot in our community. I would say you're a huge Milwaukee supporter. You're at like every Milwaukee event. You'll see Raquel, so make sure you say hi when you see her. But I know you feel like giving back is really important. You're on a ton of different boards. You've been a leader, like I said, at HPGM. But now that you're well known, I feel like you get asked to be on these boards. But what advice would you give for those of us who, you know, aren't as well known and we're trying to give back and maybe get to a position where we would be considered for some of those community leadership board opportunities?
Yeah, I was there, right? I really saw like the need that I had to like increase my profile and my personal brand to try and reach my goals. I think what the ladies are here and virtually doing, like Temple was it for me, right? I was like, hey, can I join? Like, and thankfully I had a great nominee, Kimberly Kane, I believe was the president back then. And so she kind of brought me in, probably not at the criteria level back then that I would have been approved, but I feel like that was like my first step. But then I also really got involved with nonprofit committees. Like I wasn't board ready yet, but the committees, they were a great way for me to like learn the organization, learn how nonprofits structure, different ways I can contribute where I can bring my passions to advancing their mission. And, you know, I did that for several years and then was eventually asked to join the board of Pros for Teen Girls was my first board. So it's always special place in my heart. And so that really helped me. Yeah. And going to networking events, it was hard. Again, like I'm not an extrovert. So like the idea of like going up to somebody and like shaking their hand and introducing myself, and it was hard, but honestly, like it gets easier the more you do it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that it's hard, because watching you, I would never think that. So I think that also shows that like you're the only one that's nervous. Like no one else would ever know that that's difficult for you.
I was nervous to do this.
I think the other thing that I've seen you do is you're really brave about putting yourself out there. And I think that's probably come over your career, but I know you said to me, like, what's the worst they can say? Like, no is the worst they can say. So just try it. or you've said, I can introduce you to XYZ person, and then they can introduce you to, 3 more people. But it's hard to ask for that, I feel like. So I think it's important to know that people like Raquel are open to doing that. I've seen you do that for so many people. And the first step is you just have to ask. And I think I've started to learn that, but it's hard to learn to ask for help, I think, especially for women. But I met Raquel literally through an informational interview after that happy hour. Like I said, I'd love to learn more about what you're doing at City Hall. And we sat in her office in BMO, and it was very, I was taking my notes. And we grew a friendship out of that. And so I think it's just important to remember that, people like Raquel are happy to help and connect us.
Yeah. Again, I just think back, like when I was asking people for informational meetings, and I would send emails, I'd make phone calls, and I would never hear back from them. And that was very disheartening for me. And I remember thinking, like, I'm never gonna do that. So I literally, any informational meeting request I get, I take.
I love that.
And students, other women, like that I meet online or in person, whatever, like that's important to me, because it's like, I know how it feels to like not get that call back. And, but that's the thing, like we have long memories, right? So these women that I approached, now they're all trying to be my friends and stuff. And I'm like, remember you didn't like take my I had a long memory.
Yeah.
Cool.
Milwaukee's a small town. I love that. All right. Well, I have some fun questions before not that these weren't fun, but some more like personal questions before we get into Q&A. But if you do have questions, start texting them to my cell phone. And for everyone online, it's 414-499-5157. And I'll ask some of these kind of more personal questions while we get a few other questions going. These are easy. So I like to call these like fast takes. You can just don't think too long about it. Just say like the first thing that comes to mind. So what's your favorite Milwaukee restaurant?
Cafe Central.
Oh, okay.
In River West.
Have you been lately?
We tried, and then like the power went out. Like really,
Okay.
I wanted pasta real bad.
Classic pandemic experience. All right. What was your first job?
I was a cashier at a produce store on the south side of Chicago.
Excellent. Okay. And that's probably where you learned about customer service. What's the best gift you ever received?
I feel I get it every year. They're the handmade cards that my kids give me for
Aww.
Christmas and birthday.
That's so nice. I hope they're listening. I'm gonna tell them. They can't stop doing that. All right, I'm gonna take a few questions from the audience. This question is, you talked about raising your hand for things that other people often don't want to do. How did you make sure people didn't take advantage of you and your generosity and drive? How did you feel valued? Good question.
That's a good question. Yeah. Because it can kind of snowball, right? It's like, oh, just call Raquel, she'll do it. But again, it's like setting boundaries and knowing what's good for you for time management, what your manager is gonna approve letting you do. So I think it's just that, like, the approval process and knowing what you can and can't do. You just got to figure that out.
Setting good boundaries, yeah. What brought you here to Milwaukee, and are you from Milwaukee?
I'm from Chicago, born and raised. Like I said, I had my first child at 18. At 20, I was married at 18, and my husband at the time was transferred here to Milwaukee. So I went to Carroll College, and then I finished at Cardinal Stritch. So I got rooted here. I've been here 28 years now.
Love it. Milwaukee at heart, but still a Bears fan. You won't be it, don't hold it against her. You said you spent years sitting at the table without saying a word or voicing your ideas. When did you start speaking up, and how did you find the courage to overcome your fears?
I think what helped me was my board service, because it somehow just felt more welcoming. You're kind of with like-minded people, and you feel more comfortable like talking and giving ideas and taking a leadership role. And that kind of helped me practice it in the workplace. And then it just really also getting over the idea of like, I raise my hand and ask a question, like I'm not gonna have a heart attack. People aren't gonna like start yelling at me. It's like these crazy ideas that go through your head.
Right, the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm gonna switch back and forth between my fast takes questions. What would people be surprised to know about you?
This was hard. I don't know. I love country music. Like
Okay. I didn't even know.
like old school country
Secretly.
music, like Randy Travis and George Strait.
Okay, this is amazing. I love that I did not know that. This is a question from Griselda, your bestie. So she said, if you could describe yourself in one word, which one and why? Bringing the hard questions. I love it.
Compassionate.
Yeah. And say, I mean, I know why, but explain why you would pick that one.
I don't know. I just have this feeling of being able to put myself into other people's shoes. You know, and I can sense their energy and I can sense almost like their story and everything. And, you know, yeah. So.
Love it. I would definitely agree with that choice. What is your favorite podcast?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I know real quickly, like I had a really tumultuous summer and that my mom got really sick. And so I was taking care of her full time in Chicago. And so I would come back on the weekends and listen to Oprah's Super Soul Sundays, Glennon Doyle, and Brene Brown, like hands down.
The trifecta.
They, if I were ever to meet, I don't even know what I do. I'd like be a pool of tears because those podcasts got me through the summer so much. And I learned so much. Yeah.
I love that. What is your dream vacation spot?
It would be to go back to my honeymoon spot, which was the Amalfi Coast. And
Oh yeah, beautiful. So pretty. So I'll get Steve on.
yeah.
I'll let him know. You're a big cook. What's the best thing that you cook? You like to cook a lot of like meals that your parents made, right? Growing up.
Yeah, I'm trying to assimilate some of those recipes because they're kind of hard. But I would say like my favorite meal I like to make is a like pulled pork and a Mexican mole sauce with beans and rice. And margaritas, of course.
What's one thing you still want to accomplish professionally or personally?
You know, I think eventually I'd love to run for office.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, the DM.
No, I mean, like, not anytime soon, you know, just a smaller campaign and yeah. But eventually maybe the capstone of my career.
I love that. I will be here to be your communications director. That's all I mean. What would you say are your personal core values?
I've always had this like mantra, this personal mantra that is be kind, do good. That's kind of the words I live by. How can I continue to be kind, but still do good in this world?
Love it. I love how
It's a little Pollyanna.
No, I like it. This is a follow-up about your time with the DNC. So you said during those 6 months, your mental health was affected, and this question says, you know, what did you do to decompress outside of spending time with your family during that really tough 6-month period?
I think that's the problem is during the 6 months, I wasn't doing anything, like aside from a walk in my neighborhood. We were in the middle of pandemic, right? There was nowhere really to go. You know, I would have driveway happy hours with the friends, but it really wasn't enough. And it wasn't until the DNC ended that I really made an effort.
Right, and then you probably realized what a toll it had taken. Yeah. I have one more question. So if you have another question, make sure to text it. It's 414-499-5157. The last audience question is, do you think it's possible to grow your career without being willing to work 50 to 60-hour weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a shift in how a woman or one, you know, grows professionally post-pandemic. I think all that's been upended. I think the rules don't really apply, and if they do, like, we gotta help change that. It's just not fair, right? Like women go through lots of seasons of their life, and you know, to go on maternity leave and come back to a different job, or things have like really seriously changed and you kind of have to start from zero, like that's not right.
I love that you're speaking our language. 2 last questions. What's one thing you'll never do again?
I will never downhill ski down Black Diamond in Taos, New Mexico.
Great. Let's see, we got one more audience question. Do you think the next DNC will be hosted here in Wisconsin to make up for what happened? And if yes, knowing what you know now, would you also host? I don't know if that means like, would you like be involved again?
You know, that was like the biggest thing during the convention is like fighting to bring it back again. And, you know, I'm like, you know, there could be another Democratic president and there could be so many changes. It really is where the administration needs the votes or where like what state needs to carry him. But now I'm like, I guess the mayor put in for to nominate like the first letters of support. I wish nothing but the best for our region, and if we can, that would be great. No, I would not step into that role. Been there, done that. Like somebody else can like
have their moment. Yeah. Okay, got it. All right. Last question. What superpower do you wish you had?
Wish I could fly.
That's a good one.
I have a lot of flying dreams, and
okay,
kind of cool.
All right, and you could travel over.
I could just go to Italy.
Exactly. Well, I think I speak for everyone when I say we really enjoyed this. I feel like I learned so many things that I'm going to take back to my personal and professional life. So just thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us, and we just so appreciate everything that you do in Milwaukee.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Temple. Thanks for
Oh my gosh, you guys, thank you for spending the morning with us and just sharing your wisdom. I have a few wrap up announcements. Thank you again. Thank you to both of you. For everybody here that joined us in person or online, please take the post-event survey so that we can continue to develop impactful programming coming out of EWL in 2022. Hard to believe that's just around the corner. I also want to put a quick plug in for a couple of events we have coming up at Marquette as part of the Institute for Women's Leadership. On December 2nd, we have a Women and Money event, which I think you are part of too. So if you like your account here,
thank you.
IWL experts will offer a series to learn from financial advisors and experts on what women need to know better to steward their financial destiny. There's a flyer on that at the orange table on your way out. And then on March 8th, our Institute for Women's Leadership team is hosting a spring gala. So if you want to learn more or get involved in that, be sure to follow them on social media or again, grab a flyer. And finally, I hope I see all of you at the leadership event next week, Friday. So I'll be there. Hopefully we see you. And it's going to be just another great one delivered from this team. So thanks again for joining and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Great.